Hello, YouTube. I'm Vince White. I'm an employment attorney, and on this channel, we answer publicly posted questions from YouTube users, getting folks the answers they need from an employment attorney, which we're sort of doing today. I had a conversation, I don't know, within the past 2 weeks with someone, and it kind of brought up a whole topic of attorney misdeeds that don't really ever get talked about. The bait and switch, right? I mean, listen, all kinds of times that happens in sales, but people don't often think about it with their attorney, right? And listen, it does make sense, though. These firms, they want you to sign the retainer. They want you to pick them. They want a percentage of what they think you're going to settle for. They want maybe even just the upfront retainer. If it's a firm that charges an upfront retainer, they might even just want the press on your case sometimes. And so they want to do, for whatever reason, they want to do whatever they can to get you to sign. And sometimes they'll say one thing and then not live up to it. Ye old bait and switch, right? Now, that can take a lot of different formats. You could be talking to one attorney who's swell, and then you sign the retainer and you never see that attorney again, right? That's something people have occasionally accused me of, right? Like, I'll talk to a potential client, we'll have a good conversation, but I'll be clear during the intake, like, hey, we're going to be assigning you a team of 3 attorneys. I will be involved with the team. I will be one of those 3. I'll be on the back end doing a lot of quality control work. I'll be involved in some of the settlement work. But, I'm not your day-to-day point of contact. And I say that up front. But people have felt, even when I say, hey, you're going to have 3 attorneys, I will not be your daily point of contact. I'll remain available to you if you want to schedule a call with me, but I'm not your daily. They'll still feel like, hey, you misled me. It was a bait and switch, right? It wasn't, right? It wasn't. But that being said, they feel that way, and that change of attorney can be handled poorly. I think we handle it well, but other firms definitely don't. They'll have somebody good, somebody clients like handling the intake process, and then the case gets handed off to an associate who might not know that much, doesn't have as much partner oversight as you might want for a young attorney, and the luck of the draw. Did you get a good associate? Did you get a bad associate? Does your associate know what she or he is doing? It can be a really scary form of bait or switch, right? Bait and switch. Sometimes they change the venue on you, right? You sign up with a firm for federal litigation, and they stuff your case into arbitration. Now, listen, they might find out you signed an arbitration agreement that's binding, and they might not have a choice. But also, they might just think that arbitration is easier for some reason, right? Another way that could go is the exact opposite, right? You sign up for a case, you want to keep things quiet. You want a quiet case. You want to keep it in the agencies or maybe keep it in a confidential arbitration. And all of a sudden, that firm is doing things to put your name out there. Ooh, this could end your career. This could be a real concern for your career, right? It's a really dangerous form of bait and switch because, listen, they could win you tons of money, but odds are it's never going to be enough to make up for a very serious potential impact to your career, right? Listen, bait and switch you hear all the time in settlement amounts, right? You'll be talking to an attorney up front, and they'll make some preliminary statements like, well, based on what you're telling me during intake, I think I'd go with a demand of this much, right? Great. Now, in all fairness to that law firm, those numbers evolve over time, right? As the attorneys learn more, that settlement suggested demand can go up, it can go down based on what the attorneys know. That's fair game. But if let's put it this way, if at intake they're like, yeah, we think you should demand $1 million, and then you sign the retainer like, great, so you should take 40 or you should take 20. Like, we need you to take 20 right now. We're going to drop you. Whoa. What changed? What changed in the intervening like 2 days, right? It's probably not new information in that scenario, unless it's, listen, some very damning information, like you punched your boss and you didn't tell them at intake, right? But if it's a really quick about face on settlement value, maybe you're dealing with some case flippers who just said some stuff to get you to sign a retainer and then do their best to pressure you to settle for, pennies on the dollar, what your case might be worth, right? That's a real issue in our industry. It's a real issue, and that's a very common form of bait and switch. Listen, they could bait and switch as to, I guess before we go on the settlement amounts, one thing I'll say is within our firm, we let the various attorneys working on your case give their thoughts, right? So, like, listen, somebody could talk to me and they'd be like, Vince, what do you think about my case? And I should be like, I think you should demand, I don't know, $500,000. And they talk to another one of their members of their team, and the person's like, I think you should demand $300,000. They talk to one more, and the person's like, I think you should, demand $400,000. Like, Vince, this was a bait and switch. You getting different numbers here. Like, well, no, it's not a bait and switch. I'm saying, hey, in my experience, I think you should demand this much. But the other litigation partner and the associate assigned to your case, they have different thoughts. It's not that my thought is gone. You still have my recommendation. It's my thought. That's what I believe. I gave you the number I believe in, right? That's where I think you should open your settlement demand. They also gave you the numbers they believe in. It's not that my number's gone. It's not that my recommendation is now invalid because somebody else also issued a recommendation. It's that you have the advantage with it when you deal with our firm of getting multiple recommendations from multiple attorneys. And each of them will explain the why, right? The why. Why do I think you should demand this much? That happens all the time. It's not a bait and switch. And I just want to clarify that, right? Because there's very legitimate reasons why settlement numbers would change. New information. You might mitigate, right? You might find a job, so the economic damages are impacted. You might refuse to treat with mental health professionals, so the economic damages are impacted. Or you might experience physical symptoms of emotional trauma. Emotional damages might grow, right? There's a lot of things that can happen. So settlement numbers change, and recommendations from different attorneys with different risk appetites are also going to be different. These things are not bait and switch. But going to a firm and then being like, you should demand $1 million, and you sign, and 48 hours later, like, yo, we got you 20, sign here or else. Like, that's probably a bait and switch at that point, unless they can give you a really, really convincing and clear reason why the numbers changed, right? And I think that's important. Hear the why. Hear the why. Why? And is it legitimate? Does it make sense? Does it hold water? Is that narrative hold together? Or is it nonsense? Only you can decide. You're the decider, right? You're the plaintiff. Now, the last kind of group of bait and switches are tied to strategy, right? And listen, there's a lot of firms that are gonna get you to sign a retainer, like, hey, we're gonna be aggressive, we're gonna push hard, we're gonna go for discovery, we're gonna go for deposing this person. We're not gonna let this case sit. And you sign the retainer. And then they're like, great. So we got to file this in 200 days because of the federal statute of limitations. We got 200 days left to get this filed. So you'll hear from us in about 100 days. Well, why? Why would we wait? I know that we have 200 days because, it's depending on the state, a 300 or 180 day statute of limitations under the EEOC. So for the federal claims, right? So why we wait 100 days? I mean, Why wouldn't we apply the pressure? Like you said, law firm, like that's why I signed here. I like the way you talk. You're talking about applying pressure, being aggressive, pushing. Why is that not happening? Well, we're busy. If you're so busy, maybe you shouldn't have taken on another case if you can't do right by it, right? And that's reality. That's something you gotta, that's a bait and switch. That's not what you signed up for, and there's not really an excuse for it. Them being busy is not your problem, right? They're a highly compensated professional here. They owe you a duty of loyalty. They work for you, and your case is worth potentially a lot of money to them. So being busy is something they need to plan for. They need to be on top of, right? They need to know that before it happens and plan for it and staff correctly. And if they can't handle a case in the way that they promised, in the way they claim they would, the answer is just don't take the case, right? So anyways, all these bait and switch maneuvers that you see, it's very disheartening when you see it with a firm. And I think it can really lead to a breakdown in your relationship with the firm. It's hard to fight an employment case with attorneys you don't really trust, right? Because there's a lot of trust required with your representation. Like they're going to come to you and say, hey, listen, I know you're at $800,000 and they're at $100,000, but I need you to make a move. I need you to come from 800 down to like 720, and they're going to come up. We've been talking about it. We're bracketing, and like, this is the play. This is the move. This is what we recommend. What do you think? Can we do that? And if there's good trust between you and that attorney, easy to say, yeah, okay, let's do it, right? If the trust is broken down, which it can do very rapidly in a bait and switch scenario, I don't know that you're going to say, oh, go ahead. I don't know you're going to say that. I think you might say instead, I don't know, attorney, the way you've been acting, I'm not sure that I really trust your advice anymore, right? And that's a real problem, because how do you come back from that? How are you going to save that situation? Well, we do have a playlist on the channel, how to have frank settlement discussions with your attorney. And I think that's important. You got to have these frank discussions. If you think you're experiencing a bait and switch, say so. Like, hey, you're my attorney. What's going on? You said one thing at intake. It's different now. I'm concerned. What's happening? Why is it happening? Really listen. If the why makes sense, great. It doesn't sound like a bait and switch at that point, right? Like if it holds together, if it tracks, at that point, listen, things change. You can enter a case thinking one thing, find out some new stuff. You don't think that one thing anymore. You think whole new strategy in order here, right? Fair enough. But if you try to have that conversation with your attorney and they refuse, or they say nonsense that doesn't make any sense to you, okay, we got a real breakdown of trust. We got a bait and switch. All the frank conversations in the world might not save this. You could have a conversation with them about, hey, this is not what I signed up for, right? I'm going to need you to let go of the lien on my case. I'm going to need you to maybe discuss a refund if you paid them something up front. I'm going to need this problem addressed, because this case is, it deals with my livelihood. It deals with the means by which I feed my family, keep a roof over my head. And so it's, of paramount importance to me. And I'm not going to put up with a nonsense bait and switch. I have options. I have rights. There's a client's bill of rights, right, in effect. And what you're doing is dishonest, and I don't want to deal with you. And I think having that conversation and really listening during that conversation and having it in good faith can fix a lot of situations. And in the situations where it can't fix what's going on, in a true bait and switch scenario where a law firm got you to sign a retainer by saying one thing and then, just didn't live up to it. They did the exact opposite. Okay, maybe it's time to part ways. Maybe it's time to, have discussions with other firms? Do you have other options for representation? Do you, if you break ties with this firm that you no longer trust, will you have some where to take the case? Figure that out before you jump. Know for a fact, right? Anyways, that's my recommendation. I do recommend that, frank settlement discussions with your attorney playlist. I think it can get a lot of the miscommunication out of the way, which can be helpful in this scenario. And if you're experiencing a bait and switch scenario with your attorney, I'm sorry, that sucks, because it makes a hard situation so much harder. Not having that trust between you and your representation, God, how do you come back from that, right? Like, how do you deal with this terrible, horrible, this horrible situation? You've been attacked on the basis of your very identity, if it was discrimination, or somebody's trying to elicit sexual favors or sexual affirmation from you, just, at threat of your job. Like, that's horrific. And now you got to deal with this. I'm just so sorry. I'm sorry you got to deal with it. I'm sorry that there are people like that in our industry, but I thought this video might help people deal with that scenario a little bit. And so I wanted to make it. If it was helpful, like, subscribe, and comment down below. If it was not, give me that thumbs down. Let's just know where we all stand, right? Give me that thumbs down. Let me know you hate me. I'm not going to talk to you about it. It's okay. Anyways, take care, everybody. And if you know the bait and switch,